Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathleen Rose. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Instructional Officer here at Gavilan. And the purpose of our meeting today is to talk about our evaluation cycle, which you may be a part of as either an evaluatee, or you may be here today to become a trained faculty evaluator. So I want to start by talking a little bit about the purpose of evaluation, why evaluation is so integral to the work that we do here at Gavilan. And first and foremost, the purpose of evaluation is for instructional improvement. Evaluation helps us do better in the classroom. It helps us strategize, use new strategies in our classroom teaching to be able to look at different instructional modalities and to continuously improve what we do for our students here at Gavilan, which of course is a huge objective. Another purpose of our evaluation system here at Gavilan is that we want to protect and preserve the integrity of the curriculum. You all teach to curriculum that has gone through a substantial process on campus. It has gone through rigor of the curriculum committee. It may have gone through revision. It may have gone through changes along the way, and we want to make sure that the curriculum our students receive is the curriculum that they should be receiving based on Ed Code, our Title V regulations, as well as our department scrutiny. Thirdly, the purpose of evaluation is for accreditation standards. Gavilan is lucky in that we've just gone through our 2013 substantial self-study and evaluation for ourselves for accreditation, and we have become fully affirmed for another 6-year period. So we're celebrating that for certain, but in looking at that, we know that we have to continually look at instructional improvement as a focus of what we do on campus, and we're doing that in a number of ways, and evaluation is just one part. And then lastly, the purpose of evaluation for all of you who are being evaluated, of course, is for feedback and self-improvement, for you to improve what you do in the classroom. So to start out, you all received a letter at the beginning of the semester, a very long, lengthy letter to talk about evaluation, why we were having evaluation, what the process was for evaluation, and what the steps were. And Leah's going to go through very specifically the contractual obligations of evaluation. In this form, which was sent to all faculty, both in your mailbox and electronically, we provided you with information about the protocol for evaluation, the forms that are required for evaluation, how to select a trained faculty evaluator and what that means. If you're a new faculty member, that's different than if you are a returning faculty member, and so forth. And also, there is a timeline, an evaluation timeline here. And this provides you with information about when items are due, when evaluations will be taking place, when paperwork is due to the departments and to the division and to my office, and so forth. And then lastly, there is a checklist. And my hope is that if you are being evaluated this semester, you are taking the checklist from this form and you are tacking it up on a bulletin board so that you can see exactly when things are going to take place during the fall semester, what paperwork is required, and so forth. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to show this timeline where it is on our website, because we want to make sure that you refer to it often during the evaluation process during the fall semester. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leah to talk a little bit about the contract and the requirement.
So I'm Leah Halper. I'm the Gavilan College Faculty Association President, and I'm here because the evaluation process for everybody who teaches at Gavilan is dictated by what's in the contract, which of course we negotiate pieces of at a time. And I'm going to actually go over with you piece by piece what the contract says about part-time evaluations. But I want to say first that everybody involved in education at Gavilan wants the evaluations to be fair, timely, and helpful. And when we sat down in 2011 to start talking about what should we put in place as a part-time evaluation system that's fair, timely, and helpful, the union really had as a goal to improve teaching and learning, but also wanted to build community among faculty so that we're going into each other's classes, we're learning from each other, and there's a kind of reciprocity in the process. So hopefully what we came up with will do that. We had three kind of concerns. We wanted to base the part-time evaluation on what's done with full-time faculty. We don't want to recreate the wheel and do something completely different because we're teaching the same classes, we're teaching the same students. Why have something that's really different? So we really tried to keep it as closely as possible aligned with what happens with full-time evaluations. We also wanted to help faculty help other faculty. That's really a big part of what we went in wanting to do. And then we wanted to offer something that hasn't been offered in the past at Gavilan, at least not formally, and that's remediation. If somebody gets a negative evaluation, we wanted to be able to give that person some options for improving so that they could have a positive evaluation and stay at the college. And that, of course, is tied to the whole rehire seniority discussion, but people need some options for remediation. So with that said, everyone has a copy of Articles 19.6 and 19.7. And if you're watching this as a video, you might want to just pause and find it. It's on the Gavilan College Human Resources website, and it's also at gavfaculty.com. So look for the latest version of the contract. And I just want to point out, if you look at 19.6, it's a summary evaluation of all faculty. It kind of says these are the general criteria that will be used in the evaluation of all faculty, that you maintain a clean and orderly classroom, and you respond promptly to deadlines and requests, you maintain appropriate records. That applies to everybody. So I just kind of want to point that out. That's an overview. But part-time faculty process really starts at 19.7, which is towards the bottom of this page. And I'm just going to go through it. And any questions that come up, let's talk about at the end, so make a note. So part-time faculty are going to be evaluated once in their first semester. And that's an administrator usually who's going to do that. And then 2 more times in the next 5 semesters. And then minimally 1 time every 6 semesters following the process that's outlined in another chapter. That's what the Ed Code says we have to do. That's the frequency that the Ed Code demands. And then if the district wants to, it can schedule additional evaluations at its discretion. That's also Ed Code. The administration can come into a classroom at any point to evaluate. So that's should be clear. And then 19.7.1 is the evaluation team composition. For a part-time faculty member who is returning, it's going to consist of a supervising administrator and a trained faculty evaluator. And at this point, the trained faculty evaluators are full-time faculty, preferably in your department, but if that's not possible, then you may be able to ask somebody outside the department, which we'll discuss. And the administrative member of the team is also responsible for seeing the process through to its conclusion, and that person's appointed by the chief instructional officer, and it's usually the dean that you already know and love, so that's who that is. Okay, so let's turn over. So continuing, the part-time faculty member being evaluated will be evaluated by the supervising administrator during the first semester of service. That's a given. After that, however, the faculty member being evaluated will select a trained faculty evaluator to carry out the evaluation. So the trained faculty evaluator is somebody who's employed within the GCFA unit. The faculty asked to do the evaluation may decline. A full-time faculty person who's asked may say, no, I don't want to. That's their right. And at that point, another trained faculty member can be chosen by the part-timer, or the administration representative on the team can aid in selecting a trained faculty evaluator. So some departments have kind of a best practices thing going where they keep a list of people who are willing and interested in their department of evaluating. So hopefully your department does that, or it could do that if it hasn't started. And the number of faculty, it says when the number of faculty in the discipline is small in number, the trained faculty evaluator may be selected from a discipline outside the faculty member's area of expertise. So if there's nobody to actually do your evaluation, you can go outside your department. So 19.7.11, training for faculty evaluators and administrators. People have been trained, but we're doing these ongoing trainings. And the trained faculty evaluator is paid $100 per evaluation. And then in lieu of compensation, the person either can get flex or co-curricular hours at their discretion, as long as the supervising administrator is fine with that. Okay, so let's look at 19.7.2, what's the process? For part-time faculty, the notice is given within the first 2 weeks of the semester, and that comes from the Office of Instruction. And if there's a non-routine evaluation, that's performed at the discretion of the supervising administrator. And again, that can happen at any time. Usually, though, the routine ones you know very early in the semester. The trained faculty evaluator makes at least one class observation, with a second observation being mandated at the request of the evaluatee or the supervising administrator. If either thinks that that just wasn't a good showcase of your teaching talent, or something went wrong, either can ask you to have your trained faculty evaluator come back. So a trained faculty evaluator may need to come twice. If concerns are raised, the supervising administrator and the part-time faculty member will meet to discuss the concerns and create a remediation plan. So that's written into the process. The observation, or two, if there are two, will be summarized on the observation form that we use for all full-time faculty and all part-time faculty, and the trained faculty evaluator or administrator will discuss that form with the person who's being evaluated. So the discussion is part of it. You don't just get observed and then somebody falls off a cliff. It continues. So 19.721 talks about the meeting where that happens. A post-observation meeting will occur with the trained faculty evaluator and or the administrator about the evaluation. If the observation was done by a trained faculty evaluator, the presence of the administrator is going to be at the discretion of the evaluatee. The administrator can be invited, but is not required to be there. And the evaluatee does not have to invite the administrator. The evaluation will be summarized on the required evaluation cover sheet, and the trained faculty evaluator and or administrator will present and discuss this cover sheet and other evaluation materials with the evaluatee. And we'll show you what that sheet looks like shortly. The evaluation cover sheet, the self-evaluation, student evaluation summaries, and an administrative evaluation all become part of the part-time faculty member's personnel file. However, if the observation was done by an administrator, the observation form will also become part of the discussion and part of the personnel file. But if the observation was done by a trained faculty evaluator, the observation form will be given to the part-time employee, I give it to you, and may be part of the personnel file at the discretion of the employee. So you don't have to pass it along if you've had a trained faculty evaluator. You can, but you don't have to. That's a choice that you can make that usually you would discuss with your trained faculty evaluator in that post-observation meeting. 19.7.3 is the hold harmless language that the district indemnifies and holds harmless any faculty member against any and all claims arising out of any evaluation. So people won't be afraid to be your evaluator because of something that could happen. 19.7.4, coming down the home stretch here, is about remediation. So if there are any areas of serious concern in the final evaluation report, in any part of it, and it lists all the different parts, all of that will be reviewed with the faculty member and the supervising administrator as soon as they're identified. And when remediation is required, and it has to be based on evidence in that evaluation report that it's required, a remediation plan will be developed by the evaluatee and the administrator, outlining specific performance objectives, timelines, other classroom observations that are going to happen. So now we talk about the unpleasant situation where if performance is deemed unsatisfactory, what happens? The part-time faculty person whose performance is deemed unsatisfactory upon the first evaluation may or may not, at the discretion of the supervising administrator, be offered subsequent course load assignments and or a remediation plan for an upcoming semester. In that first evaluation done by an administrator, if it's a bad evaluation, in other words, the college has the right to not ask someone back and also to either offer or not remediation in a first semester. After that, it changes. Continuing part-time faculty whose evaluation is deemed unsatisfactory shall work with the supervising administrator to develop a clear remediation plan with specific reasonable goals, activities, and timelines. So that's a joint process. And then it lists a bunch of activities that remediation plans could include, that include workshops, conferences, observing other faculty, doing specified tasks. Administrators may conduct additional non-routine evaluations as necessary, particularly to support a faculty member who's implementing a remediation plan. So they may be in and out of the classroom evaluating. And remediation timelines can't go on forever and ever. They're limited to 1 or 2 semesters, and then they're followed up pretty quickly the next semester by a reevaluation. And the timelines will include follow-up meetings with the supervising administrators so that progress towards the goals can be discussed. Written administrative appraisals of the implementation of this remediation will become part of the evaluatee's personnel file. And if a part-time faculty member gets 2 negative evaluations consecutively despite remediation, that will be grounds for the district ceasing to offer assignments to that faculty member. The appeals process is described in 1975. Part-time faculty being evaluated shall have access to all materials used to make a given evaluation and the right to respond to any evaluator's written materials or verbal statements in writing, and to have their responses included in the record of evaluation. One more piece that we're working on that will probably be in place pretty quickly is any additional training that someone might need to do a trained faculty evaluation of an online or hybrid class. That's not in place yet, but it should be soon.
So that's a lot of contract language and a lot of information, so thank you for absorbing that. Hopefully you will hear and see as you experience this process that the focus is really on the dialogue between you and the supervising administrator or the trained faculty evaluator. It's about instructional improvement. So this process is being set up in order to provide an opportunity for ongoing dialogue and relationship building between you and other members of your department, other faculty in your division, as well as your supervising administrator. So we have worked so hard, the district and GCFA, to make sure that this is completely a comprehensive evaluation process that is something that we can continue to use for strategic planning on campus, for master planning, and for resource allocation and instructional improvement across the line. So thank you for your participation in this. So I'm going to talk about forms and timelines. Now that I've given you a philosophic moment, we're going to get right back into the forms. And Leah is going to assist us in showing us where the forms are. If you go to the Gavilan College website and you go to the faculty and staff development section of the intranet, then you're able to get to the evaluation homepage. And so this page has all of the evaluation forms, part-time, full-time, for all instructional faculty. And when we did the orientation yesterday, we were talking about the evaluation forms for counselors. And I've learned that the part-time evaluation observation form is the same one for counselors and librarians. So we can go here as a one-stop shop to get all of the forms that you need. So Leah, let's first look at the timeline. The timeline was provided to all faculty in the handout that went out both electronically and in paper fashion at the beginning of this semester. And so we want to show you where we are currently in the timeline and give you an opportunity to see when it will conclude, because it will be done by mid-December. Okay, so we're at the beginning of October. And so already in the timeline, the first week of September is where you received information about the evaluation process. And right now, we're at the point between September 16th and October 19th, where faculty, if you're to be evaluated this semester, you would have received your package of student summary sheets to hand out to your students so that they can provide an evaluation of your teaching and of the class. And you've received from Pilar Conaway in my office very explicit directions about returning those student summaries back to the Office of Instruction. And so by the 9th week, by October 21st, those packets need to come back to our office. So those evaluation summaries are done really at the beginning of your semester, or within the first 5 weeks of your semester. And then we compile them, including all of the comments, so that when you sit down with your trained faculty evaluator or your supervising administrator at the end of the semester, you'll be able to talk about those as well, which can be a part of your dialogue. By November 1st, those evaluations will be distributed back out to the faculty and evaluating administrators. And the November 16th date, which is in bold on the timeline, is very important because that is the time when all classroom observations have to be completed. So they need to all be done by November 16th. So it's very important, if you are being evaluated this semester, that you identify a trained faculty evaluator, and you can let our office know and the supervising administrator know who that trained faculty evaluator is, so that we have an idea of who you will be having your post-observation discussion with, and who we can expect to help to complete the cover sheet, which I will talk about in just a minute. Then November 9th, the evaluation documentation should be completed and submitted to the area administrator, and then by the end of the semester, or December 16th, the process should be done. So are there any questions on this timeline? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Okay, so if you could take us to the cover sheet, please. The cover sheet looks like this, and we developed this as a part of this process because without the cover sheet, there are 3 or 4 different components of the evaluation package that are just kind of out there, and faculty were very confused, and we were confused about where do you turn in the observation form, where do you turn in the self-evaluation. I've gotten my student summary, what do I do with that? You know, how do I wrap this process up? So the cover sheet was developed to do some pretty critical capturing of the timeline of how you are completing your evaluation. So there's information on top about you and about the semester and the class that has been observed. And then what's most critical is the date when the observation occurred needs to be captured on the cover sheet, and when the post-observation meeting occurred. So we need to know that those 2 things happened, that the observation occurred and that the post-observation meeting and dialogue occurred with your trained faculty evaluator. And then to the left of that, you'll see that those are all the forms that are required for the entire package. And as a evaluatee, your responsibility is to really get this signed off, get this form done, and then you can turn in this form to your dean. And then at that point, beyond your self-evaluation, you're basically done. It's up to your dean to put the entire package together. And the entire package includes the cover sheet on top, and then the observation form or not, depending on whether or not you are including that in your personnel package. And then the administrative evaluation. The administrative evaluation is done by your dean or supervising administrator, and this is the evaluation form where they go and look at your instructional materials, take a look at your syllabus, make sure that you're in compliance with the information that is required to go on a course syllabus. And then the student summary, so a copy of the student summary, and then your self-evaluation form. Your self-evaluation form, which is located on this website, and at one point we gave you hard copies of this as well. Now, the self-evaluation form has been something that we haven't spent a lot of time talking with faculty about, but it's an incredibly important part of this evaluation package as well. And I will tell you that it's something that I read. I read all of them because I'm very interested in how your teaching experience at Gavilan has contributed to your professional development and what your experience has been like to teach here at Gav. And so please take the time to fill out your self-evaluation. I know the supervising administrator deans read it, and I do as well. And so that checklist on the left will help the faculty to understand and see what the complete package is. And so once the package is complete, the cover sheet goes on top, and then it comes to my office. And Pilar Conaway, my assistant, will review it to make sure that all the pieces are here, all the components have been provided, and then the evaluation is complete.
A key thing from the point of view of part-time faculty who are being evaluated is this little section here that I just want to kind of highlight. The trained faculty evaluator recommends that the supervising administrator follow up with an additional observation, yes, if that person felt there were problems. If the person felt that there were no problems of any significance and that the administrator doesn't need to follow up, they would put a no. So of course, what people hope for is the no. But this is really a critical component because the evaluation, this evaluation is finished, but if yes is checked, it will probably trigger another administrative evaluation.
Who is responsible for this form being filled out?
So I guess my response to that would be, it is the responsibility of both the evaluator and the evaluatee to fill out the form. However, as is evidenced on the form, the evaluator fills out the top part, and provides the recommendation that Leah talked about. And also, but I would say that both need to confirm the date, and then obviously both sign.
Okay.
Okay?
Still not.
Thank you for that
clear,
clarification.
but okay.
Well, and of course, this form is something that is an ongoing part of our discussion, and it could be something that we could change in the future. But right now, the main thing we want to capture is who was involved, when did they observe, what do you recommend in going forward, and was everyone a part of the process who needed to be?
You see, another reason for the question is it says attached form in support of evaluation. Yet when you described it, I do not provide those forms.
A practical answer from somebody who does a lot of these evaluations as a trained faculty evaluator, I fill out all of this, and then when I sit down with a person, I either verify that they have all these things, or I tell them, you're going to need to check all of these things off, but I'll go ahead and sign it, assuming that you're going to do all these things and attach them when you hand it to an administrator. And then we both sign it at the bottom.
I do not have the administrator evaluation of faculty form.
Good
Okay?
point.
Right.
Do I get
Right.
it? At
Yes,
the,
I think you do.
And therefore, I have to put it together behind the cover letter and take it to my dean. Is that what you want?
Yes, and that's a good question. I don't know if all the deans get that to you in a timely manner so that you can include it in your packet, but that's something we should probably ask them to be sure to do so that you have them to put into your packet.
Oftentimes, the deans will not do that portion until they've received the cover sheet and they know that you're finished with the observation, and then they'll do their administrative evaluation and ensure that the package is complete before it comes to us. But the link that we need to strengthen there is the communication between you and your dean at that point, so that you're aware of what's on that form. In fact, let's bring up the administrative evaluation of faculty form, Leah. So let's scroll down to the bottom of this form, because I believe this is a form that's only reviewed by the administrator. So the administrator should have this form at the ready at the time that you come in with your cover sheet and your copy of your student summary and your self-evaluation.
Okay.
They do not require your signature on that form. It's basically their review of your instructional materials.
Okay. Well, this is from the student evaluation.
Student evaluation review, and then I believe there is a second section for course material review. So when your student summaries are completed, the dean receives a copy of them as well as you.
To whom do I give my course material?
Your course material, your course syllabus, is required by your division at the beginning of every semester.
That's
So
fine.
you've turned that in
That's only
already.
part of my course.
Now, if you choose to share your course material, your instructional material with your trained faculty evaluator, you can.
Okay.
And if not, that's okay too.
Okay.
Okay, so do the forms make somewhat sense then? The last thing I wanted to talk about is ongoing communication, because the evaluation process, as we talked about at the very beginning, is about ensuring that we have adequate dialogue and communication and transparency in this process. So you should know that you can go to full-time faculty in your department with questions about evaluations. You can go to your dean or supervising administrator with questions about the evaluations. You can certainly come to my office and speak to either Pilar Conaway or myself about it. And at this point, just about everyone who is a full-time faculty member on campus is a trained faculty evaluator. So they should have a great understanding of the process and the purpose of evaluation. And as we move into talking about the elements of part-time faculty rehire, the evaluations will continue to be an integral part of our process here at Gavilan.
You know, no process is perfect. This one seems to be working pretty well so far, but we really want to hear if there are concerns or changes that would make it better. Funnel those through the union, because we can reopen this article and talk about it again and make some changes.
Thank you very much for your attention.